So last week we talked about optimism, the characteristics of an optimist versus a pessimist, and I gave you a strategy on how to lead kids more towards an optimistic approach. I also gave you the task of paying attention to the comments that you make during the week. Are they more of an optimistic statement or are they more of a pessimistic statement? Today, we're going to continue talking about optimism, and I'll give you a strategy to work on your own pessimistic thinking. It's important to remember that kids learn a lot by just watching us. So if we model optimistic thinking, our kids will be more likely to develop optimistic thinking as well. We want to have optimism with a bit of realism. There are times in life that optimism can backfire on us. If we always think, oh yeah, everything's great, everything's going to turn out wonderful, we could get ourselves in a bit of trouble. We want to have some realism or realistic anxiety. Now, I don't mean the anxiety that overwhelms us and stifles us, but a realistic anxiety can be very helpful. We do need to worry about doing well on our job, paying our bills, doing well at school. Realistic anxiety can help us try harder, and it can help motivate us towards taking action. The difference I see here is that realistic anxiety helps us in dangerous or serious situations, whereas overly pessimistic or overly anxious thinking kind of gets us stuck. Martin Seligman talks about flexible optimism, and I'm going to read to you what flexible optimism is so I can make sure I don't mess it up. So flexible optimism is optimism with eyes wide open and the ability to use pessimism's keen sense of reality, but not getting stuck in its dark shadows. So what we want here is a balance between the optimism and pessimism. We want the optimism to give us hope to move forward, but a bit of pessimism to kind of keep us on our toes. A second thing to keep in mind is that even if we're mainly optimistic in most situations, there might be certain situations that we're more pessimistic. For example, you might be very optimistic at work, but for some reason have more pessimism at home. Or we might be optimistic in relation to some people, but not to other people. If you followed my Facebook post last week, you might have read that one of my friends commented she's very optimistic when it comes to dealing with her kids, but not so optimistic in relation to herself. Something to think about on this. If you're a pessimist or pessimistic in certain situations, does the pessimism serve a realistic or helpful purpose? Meaning, does the pessimism keep you out of danger or keep you out of a troubled situation? For example, if I don't wear my seatbelt, I could die in a car crash. Or if I don't keep going to work and getting there on time, I could lose my job. These are pessimistic thoughts or realistic anxieties that serve a helpful purpose. If your pessimism just buries you in shame and self-doubt, it's time to make a change. So let's look at a way to change your pessimistic thinking. A psychologist by the name of Albert Ellis developed a way to change pessimistic thinking into optimistic thinking, and then Martin Seligman added to that concept. So Ellis described his strategy with an ABC acronym, and then Seligman added D and E to the concept. The ABC part of this we covered in the last video. The A is the adverse event. It could be trivial, could be life-changing. The B is your beliefs. What do you believe about your personal role? Do you believe this to be persistent? Do you believe this to be pervasive? If you want more information on that, I'd kind of look back at the other video. The C are the consequences. What are the consequences to your beliefs? How do you feel about it? How does it affect your actions? Do you feel motivated or encouraged? Or do you feel helpless or even depressed? As far as action, do you take steps to move forward and change things? Or do you just give up? The D in this strategy stands for disputation. So basically what that means is disputing and arguing against your thoughts. This is where you can really start to make some changes. If you have a pessimistic thought, you want to dispute it, you want to argue it, and find the falseness in your negative thinking. Okay, so let's say you lose your job and you start to have thoughts like, it's all my fault, I'm not good at anything, nothing's ever going to get better, I'm never going to find another job, this is going to ruin my life. Or let's take a parenting situation. You have an argument with your child and you start to have some pessimistic thoughts about it like, I'm a terrible parent, I'm going to ruin their life, I'm going to mess everything up, things are never going to be good between us. Or maybe you have pessimistic thoughts about your child themselves, like he or she's just a bad kid, he's never going to learn, he's going to ruin his life. We want to think about these negative thoughts, these pessimistic thoughts, and argue against them. If it helps, you might think about it this way. What if someone else was saying those things to you, making negative comments about you or negative comments about your child? You wouldn't take it, would you? What kind of arguments would you say back to that person? These are the same kind of arguments you want to say back to yourself. You might make some observations or comments such as, well, this is the first time in 20 years that I ever lost a job. Or there are other issues involved like downsizing, bad economy, the company was sold. You might think about, I did well at that other company that I worked at. Or I have great skills related to XYZ. Maybe I can find a better job, a job that I like more. For the parenting situation, you might make the argument, I've done well in lots of other areas of parenting. This is just one fight. It's not the end of the world. We've worked things out before, we can work them out again. This could be a learning situation. They're not bad kids, they just don't know better because they're still developing and learning. Mistakes happen, and we learn from them. It's all part of growing up. So think about the consequences of the first set of beliefs that I gave you, the pessimistic ones. If you choose to stick with those beliefs, you're going to continue on that pessimistic downslide. Now, think about the results of arguing against or disputing those pessimistic beliefs. This leads us to the E part of Seligman's part of the concept, which stands for energize. When you decide and make that conscious choice to argue and dispute those pessimistic beliefs, you will become energized to move forward and make changes rather than staying stuck. In this video, we learned the pros and cons of optimism, the importance of having optimism with a touch of realism, and how to recognize that we might be optimistic in some situations and with some people, but pessimistic in other situations. We also learned a way to dispute our pessimistic thoughts so that can lead us into increased levels of optimism. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you can find it helpful to your family and your personal life. Thanks for watching my video. If you want to read more about learned optimism, I'll put a link to Martin Seligman's book in my post. Just so you know, to be totally transparent, I might make 50 cents off the sale. That could change everything. I'm very optimistic. See you in the next video.